Hi, Stacy here with Limelight AZ. So, after this morning's post about the depression and whatnot, I thought it might be helpful to do a video on the Lyme paradox. Like, what's going on? Why is Lyme so difficult? And why it's a paradox, Paradox is when you seemingly have one thing, but it turns out to be a whole heck of a lot of something else. And because of that, it makes it confusing. So what is it about this particular disease that makes it different than the other diseases? I mean, disease in of itself is pretty bad. So why is this disease any different than any other disease? Well, for one, there is an enormous difference between chronic Lyme, which is what I'm dealing with, and acute Lyme. However, acute Lyme can turn into chronic Lyme. So, if not caught early enough. So what is chronic Lyme? Well, what chronic Lyme is, first of all, is not recognized by the U.S. government and many other governments. I was talking with a Canadian friend earlier today, and I remembered hearing that that treatment for Lyme, chronic Lyme, from this point forward, when I mention Lyme, I'm talking chronic Lyme. That people that are in Canada actually come over into the U.S. to get treated for Lyme. There is a lot of money to be made in this disease. A lot of money. And a lot of people do make a lot of money in this disease. The reason is because it's not recognized. There is no cure for it. There's a lot of false information out there for it. And there's a lot of half-truths. When I was diagnosed, well, actually prior to being diagnosed, when I started studying and figured out that this is probably what I was dealing with, I asked for testing. While I waited on testing, I studied up on this disease. And how did I study up on the disease? I did a lot of Googling, that's true. However, what I mostly did was join groups and ask other people their experiences. And what I saw quickly was there tends to be a cycle that people go on. And I may have mentioned it in other videos, but there tends to be this cycle of initial doctor with diagnosis says a month of doxycycline. Almost always. It's almost unheard of to have it outside of a month, whether that's shorter or longer, and not like doxycycline. There has to be some sort of circumstances surrounding why the person isn't getting doxycycline if they are not put on that for Lyme disease. And then after that, if the person does not get better, then they realize that there's more to it, and so they start asking around. They end up in the groups and then discover that they need to go see a Lyme literate medical doctor like ASAP. So they go see a Lyme literate medical doctor as soon as they can, but because the Lyme literate medical doctors are so few and far between, they have pretty decent waiting lists. In the meantime, the people are getting worse while they wait. And so they finally end up with a Lyme literate medical doctor that they see. That Lyme literate medical doctor typically puts them on antibiotics, sometimes straight antibiotics, sometimes antibiotics with herbals. From what I can tell online, the best combination is antibiotics with herbals if you're going to do antibiotics. And so then they end up being on antibiotics for anywhere from a year to 6 years. They cycle through different kinds of antibiotics. They cycle through the frequency of those antibiotics. And the reason they do it is because the way that Lyme is, it changes form. It's basically your, not chameleon. Chameleon doesn't quite describe it. What is it? Shape shifter. It's a shapeshifter of the bacterial world, and is the smartest bacteria that there is on the face of the planet. It's a very intelligent bacteria and extremely resilient because of its intelligence. So it basically shapeshifts into these various forms with then protective outer coatings. Each shape and outer coating gives it like basically resistance powers to various things. So when you start dogging the immune system with antibiotic, then it's like, uh-oh, we don't like this stuff, and it hides and changes form. And then when it changes form, that particular antibiotic no longer works on the bacteria. So then you switch it up. You change it to a different bacteria. You change it to a different antibiotic so that you can start killing it in its current form again, or at least you hope that that's the case. And you start hitting it again, and it changes form again. And on top of that, the antibiotic may or may not get through its biofilm or protective outer coating. It may or may not affect it in its certain life stage. And it may or may not produce more bacteria. There is something called persister cells that are on the outside of basically the adult bacteria, that when you do kill that bacteria, those persister cells release and creates more bacteria. So if you think of it kind of like a starfish, so yeah, you might be able to kill that one starfish, but if you cut off its arms and throw it back in the ocean, you actually created 5 starfish. Instead of just, so you're down 1, but up 4. And the antibiotic works very similarly. Herbals are kind of in the same boat. Some stuff works better than other stuff. Then you also have to, on top of that, not just deal with the Lyme, but all the co-infections you may or may not know about. Lyme never comes by itself. It always has a co-infection. I believe my biggest problem is Bartonella, and have not had that diagnosed, but my symptoms scream Bartonella. And with all of the different co-infections that are out there, there's a couple really nasty ones. Babesia, Bartonella are the 2 most common ones, and both of those are pretty nasty. H. pylori, have no clue if I have that, and probably will never know unless I don't get better. And so there's the structure of the bacteria and difficulty in killing the bacteria. Add that in with a world that doesn't understand what Lyme disease is, and there's all sorts of confusion. Each person is affected differently because of the different co-infections that they have and the length of time they've had it, and when they were bit. So again, another interesting thing about Lyme disease is it can go dormant. So I think that is what happened with me. I think mine went dormant when at some point, or mostly dormant. I mean, I think it resurfaced during stressful periods in my life, but only enough to cause me a new minor symptom until January of this year. And then I don't even know what happened. I don't know why it was this year. I don't know what about January this year made it resurface the way that it did. But it knocked me on my butt. Literally, it made me bedridden. Went from being perfectly okay to bedridden in 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks was a struggle. So, being that January is not exactly tick season, yeah, it's possible to still have ticks, but not exactly tick season, particularly in Wisconsin. I highly doubt I was bit in January of this year. I do think it's possible that maybe I was reinfected with possibly a different strain of Lyme, or more co-infections, maybe both, sometime last summer. But for whatever reason, it didn't hit my immune system until January. So now we've got very resilient bacteria. A lot of things don't work on it. A lot of things might make you feel better, but not necessarily do anything about the Lyme. So even if you have a product that is making you feel better, there could be more damage going on in your body that because the bacteria is still there. It's just helping with your symptoms. And this is one of the big reasons why I'm so leery of these miracle cures that are professed to be good products, like the ASEA product that I've seen talked about, and various essential oils, and Plexus. I know that I've seen several people recommend Plexus, and I think that they honestly believe that it's fixing the Lyme. The people that have had good outcomes from it. Unfortunately, there's nothing that says that it is killing the Lyme. So what is going on in the background is my concern. So there's lots of, and then there's even like this other product. I don't know. There's just been a lot of products that have been presented to me. And the issue is that yeah, they might do a good job for making you feel better temporarily, maybe even long term. But where is the science that says that this is actually curing people? And can you stop the product and be fine? And that's where bee venom got set apart, was because I know of at least 2 people that have stopped bee venom therapy. Well, let me rephrase that. One person that has stopped bee venom therapy, the other believes that she could, but is treating other things outside of Lyme disease. So, and those people are no longer looking. And then there's a lot of other people that are at the 2-year mark that are healed, for the most part, with very few symptoms left over, and are headed toward that 3-year mark now. They just hit the 2-year mark, and so they're in the final stretch of this. And they don't keep looking for therapies because they're not sick anymore, or at least not. I mean, obviously their bodies are going to have some sort of residual effects of having had Lyme, but they don't keep looking. And that's encouraging to me. Okay, sorry, got on to bee venom therapy. So, the paradox is it is not recognized by many governments. The treatments that are out there, some that work better than others, oftentimes are very, very expensive. The Lyme literate medical doctors and Lyme literate naturopathic doctors are very, very expensive and often do not take insurance. Why don't they take insurance? Well, because it's outside of the scope of care. So you have to pay out of pocket. In most cases, very rarely does a Lyme literate doctor take insurance. And if they do, they've got a giant Target sign on themselves. So they treat based off of what they've seen results from. And there can be people that have been on antibiotics for 7-8 years. But in the meantime, their immune system is bogged down by these antibiotics. So hopefully they come out on the other end okay, because an immune system that is not allowed to be an immune system for 8 years is going to more than likely have a side effect, and not oftentimes a good one. One of the big concerns is C. diff, which is basically another bacteria that is produced because your immune system is fighting these other bacterias. So, and then there's the issue with pain medications too. People that are on pain medications on a regular basis also develop bigger issues. I keep jumping around and I apologize. I just keep remembering information and then I want to include it. So, it's not recognized by the U.S. government. It is not recognized by most governments. The treatment options out there are a lot of different options, but nobody really knowing if what they are doing is going to actually work, including me, and hoping for the best, you know. I know that there's people that have had Lyme disease for many, many, many years, have had it diagnosed for many years, and just go from one treatment option to the next, to try to help their bodies, and have spent a great deal of money doing it. L.A. Lobel, I believe, was in the range of $75,000 by the time she happened upon bee venom therapy. I know that there's other people, Nancy within the bee venom groups at one point, she has a video, might see if I can find it and add it to the description, but she has a video where she talks about that one of her medication, or was it one or all of her medications per month, altogether was $10,000 a month. So good luck getting insurance companies to pay for that. You know, I don't know how she did it. I know that people become financially destitute with this disease because you can't work and you can't think straight. You lose a bunch of your family and friends who can't comprehend what it is that you're dealing with. And then you use up any savings that you might have. It is a truly horrific disease. So you have a disease that nobody believes in, and the few people that do are trying to make money off of you and may or may not actually have a heart for it. It's a gamble, you know. And then all of these various things that you need to do to try to get better. There's a channel by the name of, I'm drawing a blank, A Slice of Lyme. At the very beginning of their channel, they show this depiction of, or this little video of their opening thing where they do a slice of lime. Well, a slice of lime, they, in this huge circle, they have bottle after bottle after bottle after bottle of medication and supplements. And then they do this little thing where they pull out a piece like it's a slice of pie. That number of supplements for Lyme disease is not uncommon. Can you imagine the cost of those supplements each month? Supplements alone generally, and we're not talking medications, we're talking supplements, generally cost around $200 a month for most people. And it's just, this is an extraordinarily expensive disease, and there's no cure for it, at least so far. There's no official cure for it. How can you have an official cure for something when it's not an official disease? So, it is, and then you try to explain to people this stuff, and it reminds you of the cartoon characters where their eyes go like all like circly, like, whoa, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like they glaze over. And So you feel like you're stuck in your own special little hell. The only people that really get it are the ones that are living with it and those that are living through it with you. And even those, I mean, it is my family. I love my family, and they are extremely supportive, and they are trying to understand. They don't get it. This disease is so unique. It messes with it's boring holes in your brain and creating toxins in your body that make you severely ill, and just doing a whole bunch of different things that you can't comprehend a person going through all at once. I appreciate people trying to understand and trying to say that they understand, actually. But it's kind of like a miscarriage. Like, you don't get it till it happens to you. And I came from a world that was very birth friendly and very like, poor mama, and support the mom through her miscarriage. When it happened to me, oh my gosh, it was totally something that you cannot describe. And I try with Lyme disease to describe it, but I know that it's pretty ineffective. It's one of those things that you have to live through, and then you're like, oh crap, this is bad, And I have no idea what's going on out there. I never do. I never know what's going on out there. I just hear a bunch of noise. I can make guesses. Anyways, so that is quite the paradox. I mean, and then you have people telling you that you need to do XYZ to heal your body. So you have and most of those people don't have a clue about what Lyme disease is or what makes it special, and it's just, it's so frustrating because they don't understand. I have a very beloved family member that was very insistent that I just needed to keep going to doctors until I found one that could treat me properly. But the person wasn't listening. I'm like, you don't understand. There is no treatment for this. They're just going to keep misdiagnosing me with various things that on their list of things that are approved things to diagnose people with. And I already know what it is that I have and I'm dealing with. And they are only going to be throwing prescription drugs at me. So it's very frustrating and it's tiring to try to explain this over and over and over and over again to people. And then for them to still only hear what they want to hear, which is that you don't want to get better. And so I am fortunate that I have now found I guess the best way to describe it is a 2-bubble support system. I have the first bubble, which is my immediate family within the household, who, I mean, gosh, people keep saying that I'm a warrior with this. I don't have a choice. They do. They are the warriors. They have a choice about whether or not they want to go through this with me. And I don't have a choice. I have to go through it or I die. They have an alternate option. They can leave. And they choose not to. They are the warriors, not me. So I have my first bubble of support. And then I'm seeing that I have my second bubble of support, which are virtual friends. I have not gotten close to any Lyme people because of my tendency to be somewhat distrustful of people that are that don't believe the same way that I do. We clash too much. It's too much for me right now. I don't really want to clash with people, and I don't have the energy to. So I choose to communicate with people that have similar belief systems with me, in an effort to have. It wasn't doing it in an effort to have support. It was more of my way of not going stir crazy while I'm bedridden, But I've discovered that there's a couple of people that I have that are in my second bubble, and a couple of those couple of people are local, thankfully. And you know, I have only really one friend locally that obviously doesn't live in my household that I would say that I feel comfortable with her coming over whenever she feels like it. That is not on the same religious place, or not on the same religious level. Isn't That doesn't sound right to me. The same religious perspective that I have, and she checks on me, and she makes an effort to stop, even with her life being absolutely crazy busy. And I've gotten to see her a couple of times since being here, actually like 3 times, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I know that she's dealing with a heck of a lot, and she stays up on what's happening with me. And so when we do talk, she's current on what's going on with me because of these videos. So I have her, and I put her in the second bubble, even though she's not a completely online friend, because she doesn't live in the household. So, but there's her, and then I'm finding I have a little less than a handful of other friends that I've never met and are exclusively online, that are checking up on me and making sure that I'm okay, and praying for me, and that is profound. I somehow acquired this little second bubble of friends that a few months ago, I was feeling completely alone, except for the couple of people that were going through this with me that are in my household. So I feel fortunate. Most of the time, what happens with Lyme disease is people get too ill, and their friends and family give up on them, and they're isolated. Gosh, I feel isolated now, and I'm not really. I can reach out to many people, and I'm not really isolated. But it is such a lonely disease, and it makes you at least feel isolated, even when you're not actually. And I don't know how those people get through this. I really don't. I mean, they really have to have some sort of oomph in their spirits that just will not let them die. I want to give up a good portion of the time. And if I didn't have the support system that I have, I don't think I'd be going through this. I think I would have probably killed myself by now. The number 2 killer within the Lyme community is suicide. Number 1 killer, excuse me. Number 2 is heart disease. Because it's such a lonely disease, and nobody quite gets it, and nobody believes you. I'm sure that I have people that are on my friends list, or know of my situation, thinks that it's not as bad as it is, or I just don't want to get better, or that there's more that I could be doing, and but when you've learned what you've learned about it, it's extremely depressing to try to fight that. This is a juggernaut of a disease. And How funny. I love it when stuff comes to me when I'm doing these videos. So apparently I just need to get my what is that thing called? Slingshot. And just start throwing rocks at this giant. Be like David. Be like, you might be bigger than me, but I can still take you out. But it's a juggernaut, and it's a really, really nasty, mean juggernaut. So, I hope that somewhat explains, the cycles going on within the Lyme community, and then there's this whole other part where people are misdiagnosed, that they don't even know that they have Lyme disease yet. They haven't even gotten into this matrix of craziness, because they don't know what they have. And they don't know what they have because they've been misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia, ALS, MS, hypothyroidism, being lazy and crazy, all sorts of stuff. And what they're really dealing with is Lyme disease. And why aren't they getting diagnosed with it? Because of the ridiculousness of testing. You can have 100 people that have Lyme disease, and 60% of them will come back as not having Lyme disease. That's if you know that 100 people have Lyme disease, 60% of them will come back as not having it. So how do you diagnose a disease that doesn't show even in testing, a good portion of the time? It's just the only way to diagnose it is clinically. But in order to get a clinical diagnosis, you have to go to a doctor that believes in chronic Lyme disease. So it's just this constant catch-22. And then once you finally get yourself out of one loop of a catch-22, you find yourself in another loop of catch-22. I've been fortunate. I have been able to figure out how to get myself way past what many people have to deal with for years, before they figure out that the system that is currently set up, which is a lot like the blind leading the blind, doesn't really work. It does occasionally. There are people that it works for, but very rarely, and I'm just praying that the system that I found myself in will actually work. Unfortunately, it's too new to be able to say, yes, this is really working. And the science behind it is still developing. So, but there is stuff being scientifically studied for bee venom therapy. So that's encouraging. 33 minutes. I think it's time to go. Anyways, have a wonderful day.